It takes two to make a thing go right. It takes two to make it out of sight. Well, according to Rob Bass and DJ Easy Rock. Thanks for tuning in and welcome to NPO Square, the podcast that shares the origin, mission, and journey of nonprofit organizations in New York City. Our guests discuss the humble beginnings of their organizations, the challenges and triumphs they face, and how they've managed to expand. There's also inside scoop on alternate career paths, volunteer opportunities, and inspiration on starting your own nonprofit. Let's level up together. Good afternoon, everyone. This is Adia Johnson, and I'm the host today for NPO Square. Today, we have a representative from Charity Water. Charity Water is a nonprofit organization that was founded in 2006, which provides clean, safe drinking water to people in developing nations. So we have Anthony Marinos. Thank you for joining me today, Anthony.
Thanks for having me. Yeah, it's great to be on.
Tell us about Charity Water. How was it formed and why?
Yeah, for sure. So Charity Water, as you so eloquently put, is a nonprofit focused entirely on bringing clean and safe water to people around the world. Almost 17 years ago to the day, it was really our birthday, September 7th, last month. And so it was started by a former club promoter. So our founder, Scott Harrison, was living a very different life before he realized that instead of selfishly living a life centered around partying, he wanted to live a life focused on giving back to others. And so he had went on this own personal journey of his where he volunteered abroad through an organization named Mercy Ships. And he came across the issue of water. And when he learned more and more about it, he realized that water was at the core root of so many other issues relating to health, education, gender equality, so on and so forth. And so Scott became very passionate about Charity Water. And he did the only thing he knew how to do at that time, which was throw a party. And so he threw a party and charged money at the door for the open bar. And then he turned around and he sent all of that money back, out to the field to a refugee camp actually in Uganda and funded Charity Water's first water projects officially. Since then, in these last 17 years, we've grown a little bit more than a birthday party where we've now raised almost $800 million. That's for both water and operations. And that's helped us fund over 137,000 water projects to bring clean water now to 17.4 million people across 29 countries around the world. And it's worth noting that a unique way in which we're structured is we have three key elements of who we are that I think are always worth calling out. The first is our 100% model, where 100% of all of our public donations go directly to the field. The way that we're able to do that is we have a group of private donors that fund our operational expenses. We have lovingly dubbed them the well because we love water puns at Charity Water. So the well covers all of our operational expenses. So salaries, laptops, flights, even our credit card fees on our transactions, they cover that so that when you as a donor give online, when we partner with brands, anything we're receiving publicly goes to the field. The second piece is our transparency and proof. We prove every single one of our water projects with photos, GPS coordinates, and the exact number of community members per project. And that was always important to us from the beginning. Scott set out to be as transparent as possible, knowing that a lot of people still don't trust charities. So being able to show our donor base exactly where their money was going was paramount to our initial success and continues to be a huge part of who we are moving forward. And then the last piece is really our brand. We've chosen to root our brand in hope and optimism and a brighter future. I think a lot of nonprofits fall into the trap of leaning more on gloom and doom and shame and guilt. I think we've all seen the ASPCA ads with the Sarah McLachlan music.
Yes.
which listen, it works.
It does work.
Like we get it, but we choose to go the other way. And I think the best example of that is we take the water crisis really seriously. There are 703 million people that still lack basic access to clean water. However, when we started the organization back in 2006, there were 1.2 billion people who lacked access to clean water. So in a little bit more than a decade and a half, the world has helped bring clean water to about 500 million people. So that's, when you think about it that way, that's where there's that hope and optimism that we could see this problem cease to exist in our lifetime.
One, I want to say happy belated birthday to Charity Water.
Thank you. And to Scott, it's his birthday.
Happy birthday, Scott and Charity Water. Two, Scott's first birthday party for Charity Water was for Uganda. So how do you select the areas that you aim to help, kind of make sure that you're meeting the mark to get the 703 million people remaining clean water?
Really, really good question. So we're now at a stage where we have a very robust water programs team, really incredible experts that have joined us from a variety of organizations over the years, or even new coming out of school, like they majored in public health, public policy, like a lot more of water specific even knowledge, and then they joined our team. So that team is pretty massive. And our chief global water officer, Christoph, has now been with the organization for 10 to 11 years now. So he's been around a while. The way that he often explains it is, if you look around the world, there are a particular number of countries where basic water access is a major issue, where they're really the most water stressed countries in the world. Mm-hmm. Right out of the gate, you can remove some of those for a few reasons. One is big government efforts that are going on there, and they don't, I guess they would be labeled like, don't play well with others. So in some cases, it's maybe that it's not as easy to manage the red tape or the government processes to be there. The second, another example of what areas we maybe would avoid, at least for the time being, are conflict zones. So we don't actively work in conflict zones for many reasons, but one that we often reference is, water points can often be a target on a community's back, or it could be used, against a community or a side in that way, where they could be trying to retain those water points and overwhelm some of those communities so that they have access in that way. It makes it very complicated from a safety perspective, not just for the community members, but for our team members and for our local partners on the ground. And so we take a lot of those factors. Even when you take a lot of those factors into play, there are still, I want to say it's like 30 to 35 countries, maybe even a few more, where we feel like we can do effective work. And we've already been active historically in 29. Now, to take it one step further, our water programs team works with, now we have 57 local partners on the ground who implement our projects. So when we raise all these funds publicly, we then turn around them into, sometimes it's hyper local NGOs that are local to those regions where we're working, or it could be local chapters of global NGOs. Mm-hmm. So say World Vision or International Rescue Committee. These are some of our bigger partners where we work with their field offices. And so when you get down to the granular level within those countries of what regions we should be focused on and what communities make sense to start with, our local partners really help us better understand the opportunities where we can essentially have the greatest impact and help our donor dollars go as far as possible.
Given that every area is different, of course, and their need for water and the logistics that goes into that is going to be different as well. How do you kind of keep all of the local partners consistent with your mission and making sure like everything is similar in some regard?
Yeah, we have this really robust process to even onboard new partners or work with them over time. So really every year there are these audits of the partners, the local implementation partners, to make sure that they are fulfilling their promises and that we're working in sync on a lot of these different grants that we've issued to them. It's really centered around, I think, those phenomenal relationships that have been developed over time. Mm-hmm. And when we're bringing on new partners, it's that process that we really rely on to help us make sure that they understand exactly what we're doing. We're speaking about the same problem and the same methods by which to solve it. But it's worth noting that, to your point about how everything is really different, we're solutions agnostic. So by that I mean the organization, we know, like, providing access to clean water in a country like Ethiopia looks very different than it does in a country like Cambodia or Nepal. We work with our partners to utilize whatever technologies or solutions make the most sense based on climate, environment, geography, essentially what will be the most cost effective and ultimately just the most effective from a water access system.
It's a process, right? And it seems like there's so many moving parts. So logistically speaking, what type of steps or measures would you take, like, to kind of meet your goal as far as like a full organization? Walk us through the steps of what we would have to do to get something done in a particular area.
So yeah, it's a good question. Like, I think maybe the best way to answer that would be to help you gain insight into how we're deploying these funds, or how we think about our fundraising, and then that ultimate deploy piece to the field. So we work on a calendar year, from January, standard calendar year from January through December, but we break it up into 6-month semesters or cycles. So from January through the end of June, we're fundraising for a particular set of projects. Really, it's like an inventory of our grants with our local partners. So we know, okay, we have 112 drilled wells with hand pumps that we're trying to fund in Uganda. We have, 1,000 biosand filter systems we're trying to fund in Cambodia, things like that. So we have this inventory, and during that 6-month time period, we are identifying donors, pursuing relationships with donors, whether it be brand partners, which is what I do, or individual donors, which is what our key relationships team does. There are also portions of those grants that are allocated towards the Spring, which is our monthly giving program, or one-time donations and peer-to-peer fundraisers. But ultimately, what happens is we are trying to match up all of our donations with these different grants so that we can fulfill it's almost like it's like an order, right? It's like you're like, okay, here's what we got. Like, it's like, here's what's coming into the kitchen. We've got 112 drilled wells. So we do that from January through the end of June. And then we deploy that money to the field in July. And we simultaneously flip to another set of inventory. Mm-hmm. So then from July 1st through the end of December, it's a whole nother set of grants and open projects that we're allocating donations to. Now, in terms of tools or measurement for a lot of this stuff, on the fundraising side, we use pretty much all the tools you would expect. It's like Salesforce is our CRM. So we're tracking so much of our donor conversations, are actually capturing the pledges and the donations themselves through Salesforce. We're a G Suite company, so organization. So we're all on Gmail. We use Google Docs, Google Sheets. Like, we're very often utilizing those tools to better plan our goals, track our goals, things of that nature. And then we've even used, we'll use Basecamp and other, project management tools in order to keep tabs on some of our larger requests internally. But, those are just a few of them. There are many more. Oh, and Slack. We need Slack. We're in a remote world. Obviously, we use, talk about being solutions agnostic. We use every single video call service under the sun, but Slack has been a huge asset for us, especially in the remote world.
I think it's interesting that you kind of like break down all of the items that you mentioned for the fundraising aspect for that first part for the 6 months, because it's compartmentalized, and then because it's compartmentalized, it allows for that transparency that you mentioned earlier.
Exactly.
To see exactly where all the money is going. So that's pretty.
And that's why we do that. It's like we break it down that specifically, because then we're able to say, like, oh, you made that $10,000 donation. Here's the project that you funded.
Right. So for our CUNY students, so at CUNY Startups, we pretty much service all 25 CUNY colleges, which is 275,000 college students. How would these students be able to help you on your mission? Like, how can they get involved?
Oh, wow. So many ways, but there's so at its most basic, right? The simplest way to help Charity Water, really help any organization that you're passionate about, is spread the word. I know it sounds so simple, and that's because it is, where many organizations are still relatively unknown, and it's so helpful just for people to speak passionately about the organization and the mission, even if it's shedding light generally on the water crisis to friends, family, classmates, peers, coworkers. That's a huge deal because a lot of people do not realize that there are 703 million people who still don't have basic access to clean water. So that's the easiest one. The next one would be joining the Spring, which is our monthly giving program, because you can join as low as $5 a month. And that's just an easy way to be supporting Charity Water on an ongoing basis. You know, when we first introduced this program, we talked a lot about how everyone is so used to Netflix, and now it's like Disney Plus and Paramount Plus, and I've got all my subscriptions and my accounts, and a lot of times people aren't even using half of them. And it's like, imagine if you just flipped one of those to good, and you're taking the $5 from XYZ subscription or $10 and you're putting it towards the Spring. And so that's a really easy way to support us on an ongoing basis that doesn't need to feel overwhelming from a financial commitment standpoint. And then, there are opportunities to fundraise for us from a peer-to-peer standpoint. It's also just reaching out to us with ideas, like that happens a lot, where people will contact us just to say, hey, I thought about how this company and Charity Water could be a good fit. I don't necessarily have a connection, but just wanted to put it on your plate. And then I know you and I talked about this, but the biggest way, the thing I'm most excited about lately with college students is starting clubs on campus within your colleges and universities, where you create a fundraising club that is dedicated to spreading awareness and raising funds for Charity Water across your campus. Some of the successful ones that we've had over the last few years are the group at Boston College has been incredible. They're approaching $100,000 raised all time for us, which would be amazing. Rutgers, we have a group consistently at Rutgers every year. We recently started working with students at Indiana, which has been really exciting because of the size and scope of that school. But yes, when you might have seen my eyes light up when you said there are 275,000 students in the CUNY network. So for any of you that are listening to this, we'll make sure you have my contact info, but would love to see students. It's really cool because it's a student-led initiative. They create the club, they manage the club, they get direct access to team members like me to learn more about the org and even future job opportunities down the road. But in the meantime, they're spending their time. It's almost like this best combination. You're like learning how to manage an organization, but you're also doing charitable work in the process. So.
And with that, would they need to have meet a certain quota? Like, oh, we have to have $10,000 by the end of this semester? Okay.
Absolutely not. We would never do that. We every little bit helps. And we're just so excited to see that type of investment from students with ultimately their free time.
Right.
Like they're so busy managing so many other things. So we're so grateful for any amount of support, and we provide equal support in exchange. We would never hold them to any particular minimum or something like that.
I just want to move a little bit over to your industry and just your background. You had to learn to develop some type of skills to become the director of business development and partnerships at Charity Water. So what does your role consist of, and how did you get into this industry?
Yeah. Well, my role, you nailed it. That's the exact title. My role is really focused on the brand partnership side of the organization. So it's fundraising, specifically with companies and brands of all shapes and sizes. And the business development part is that I'm focused entirely on new relationships. So brands that we haven't worked with before, and trying to establish a collaboration or partnership that's generating revenue and also awareness for our mission. Now, in addition to that, my role has expanded over the years where it's even helping identify new revenue channels for us and kind of execute or test out these opportunities. And they're more around like different communities, I would say. So one example is the colleges and universities that we were just talking about. Another is like marathons and endurance fundraising. That's something that we hadn't typically done. And I helped spearhead that a little bit with the New York City Marathon, and now we're doing it more consistently and trying to expand it. And then the last one, which arguably the biggest one, is content creators and streamers. So working proactively with Twitch streamers, YouTubers, others across, even across Instagram, TikTok, X, Twitter. I could never, when I say it, I'm like, it doesn't sound right.
It doesn't sound right.
But we work with, it's really cool. We'll work with all these different content creators to fundraise within their own audiences. And that's become a huge revenue driver, but really it helps spread awareness, like I said, because in some cases, maybe it's a lot of people watching them, and the people watching can only afford smaller donations. Well, now all of a sudden we've had a campaign where 10 to 15,000 people made donations, and you're like, wow, that's great uptick for our visibility and awareness. But that's really my role, and a lot of my days are spent talking with companies, organizations of all different kinds to find and create a really unique partnership that's supporting our mission. So there's a lot of talking, if you couldn't tell already. Yeah.
So did you have experience prior to this role, kind of like doing presentations and talking and doing all that, or if this was like kind of new for you?
Yeah, so this is a cool thing for anyone that's listening. I talk about this a lot because I came entirely from the for-profit world. So I went to GW in DC. I went to undergraduate business school there. I majored in marketing. And I promptly went and worked in-house at a bunch of startups, most notably Zipcar. When Zipcar was pretty new, I was managing our marketing in the DC, Maryland, Virginia area at that time when I worked for them. And I learned all of my roles have been sales, marketing, customer acquisition, partnerships. And that translates so well to fundraising. I think even more so than I would have guessed. Because prior to Charity Water, I had no nonprofit experience whatsoever, but I did have this overwhelming experience in sales and marketing. And so when I saw this job description, I was really blown away by it, in large part to what I've already mentioned, but also when I left college, I wanted to work at a creative agency. I wanted to be pitching brands on big ideas. And this role was exactly that, but I'm doing it for clean water. So when I saw it, I remember being like, this is crazy. And I threw my hat into the ring, and that was almost 7 years ago. And I've never looked back, not once.
Awesome. So it seems like you're in your dream job. What has
Yeah.
been your most memorable experience or aspect working at Clean Water?
I'll give you two. There's one that's really, really funny that I think is just a great example of growth within an org, or that things don't always go precisely the way you want them to in the beginning. We were just laughing about it. We were just away at an offsite with the whole team. And one of my really good friends within the org is on our finance team. And so when I first started, I went to this fundraising event, and I was explaining Charity Water to this guy at the event, and he was very excited. And he said, I can't do it right now. I've got a lot going on, and I'm actually scheduled for a surgery over the next couple of weeks. But when I'm back and I'm recovered, I'm going to donate $1,000. And I was like, wow, like that's amazing. Like $1,000. That's incredible. And so then I kind of forgot about it. And then the check came in the mail, and they brought it over to me. Like the finance team was like, hey, there's a check here. And I opened up the check, and I was like, this is so exciting. He did it. He sent it for $1,000. And I showed it to our team proudly, like, look, this check came. And the team looked at it, and they were totally earnest about it. They weren't like messing with me. They were like, it's missing a zero because $10,000 is the cost to fund a water project. And at that point, I'm brand new. So I'm like so excited for every dollar that I raise. And they were like, it's just a zero. I'm like, no, it's not. It's $1,000. They were like, oh, that's great. Which was, which I think is
So an
like,
achievement.
yeah, I thought it was like the greatest and honestly like warmest, most genuine reaction that they had, where they were like, oh, that's cute, like that's great job. And obviously $1,000 is still a lot of money. But it was a great lesson for me, and it's one of my favorite stories because it not only does it remind me to be grateful for every dollar we raise and try to channel that same energy in everything I do, but also it's become fun and playful to think about that moment and then think about all of the things we've achieved since then. So, the other examples I would give you would be like, we've been securing 6 and 7 figure gifts from Fortune 100 companies, since then. And every time I get to bring, now I'm not in the office with them anymore, but I would bring them a check. Like we worked with IBM and the Weather Channel on a huge campaign where they donated $500,000 to charity water. We've got some really big, some of our proudest moments have even come in the last 6 to 12 months where we're getting commitments from companies to the tune of $50 million over 10 years, because we're now pitching this idea of bringing clean water to 1 million people, like leaving a legacy. And so those are such exciting, big wins that we've had. But I really will never forget, getting that $1,000 check. And it's been like my anchor for my whole time at Charity Water. So
that's great. And that'll be great for the students to like understand when they receive like that first $5 from someone when they're doing
that's what I mean.
Program. Yep. It's still monumental.
Yes. I mean, every small business, every nonprofit, like everyone starts with something, and the same goes for you on your own personal journey. It's like, for me at that point, that felt like that was a big deal. Like it was like, oh, I can do this. Like I helped get this person on board to want to support our mission. And they sent what they could. And that means a lot. And then you just translate it and scale it up where you're like, now who can I talk to that has $1 million?
Right.
So.
What is a misconception that you would love to clarify about NPOs or NGOs?
Man, probably so many. One I'd love to clarify is this idea that we misspend our money. So there are plenty of NGOs that have historically done it, where they have not been truthful or not been accurate, or you've seen them utilize funds in inappropriate ways. They are the minority. And there's no other industry in the world that is held to such high standards when it comes to how we are scrutinized as an industry, which is kind of funny when you think about it, right? Like we kind of give a pass to so many of these huge companies that are doing lots of illegal things. But if our like operational efficiency isn't high enough, we get dinged for that. Right. We get people decide to not want to give because they think you're misusing your funds. So, I would say that's like that's the biggest one, is people should be, funnily enough, the term principle of charity. Like it's like believing that people are doing the best they can and that they are leading, that they are good they're well-intentioned. Right. For whatever reason, we have ironically lost the ability to have the principle of charity with charities. And so that's one that comes to mind for sure.
I wonder if it has a lot to do with the lack of transparency, because your organization is really transparent. You don't really see that when I think, I don't really like giving money to organizations in general, not even just NPOs, just in general, because I'm really iffy about it. Like, is it really going to where it's supposed to go? Sure. But I really think it's the lack of transparency. You don't really see exactly where your money is going. I'm not getting a letter saying it helped this person. Like I'm.
Yeah. You're right. And that's 1,000% why we're structured the way we are, is because we knew we had to be really loud and bold on that point, to be like, we do not want you to question this. we want you to know exactly where this is going. So that's a really big one. I think the other one that's always worth noting is like this idea that nonprofit professionals like shouldn't get paid is a wild one. Like I don't know who came up with that little nifty trick. It certainly feels like the man coming up with a way to trick people. But it's very strange. We've seen that happen before where people say things like, you should be so lucky to work at a nonprofit. And it's like, well, wait, what? Like, we need to be a little bit better, I think, in society at uplifting and taking care of the people who are thinking about the bigger picture. It's not just nonprofits, but I know a lot of teachers would tell you that. I know a lot of social workers would tell you that. Like I think there needs to be a little bit of a shift to value people within these industries and not just say like, oh, but you're giving your time. Like, we're not volunteering. Like, this is our full-time job.
Right. And a full-time job that also probably required you to get a bachelor's, a master's, and you still have bills to pay like everyone else, and
exactly,
inflation. So everything factors you still.
Exactly. And it's not, and the point is like, we want to do it. We love it. And you're right. We do love our jobs probably more than most people, but we need to be able to take care of ourselves and our families before we can take care of others. And that goes for everybody on earth. So
What's one piece of advice you would love to give someone who's new to your industry?
oh, wow. Really good one. I would say it's not being afraid to be yourself or challenge and ultimately challenge the norm, the status quo, because I think when someone if they came from a for-profit or they're brand new out of school and it's their entry-level job at a nonprofit, just because something's been done a certain way for so long does not mean that it can't change. Something I often talk to students about is, and so this is more like tongue in cheek, joking about it, but everything in the world is made up. Like, we made it up.
We sure did.
Humans made it up. There were no rules or law. Like, we created all these things. So just because something is a particular way does not mean that you can't change it or challenge it. And in fact, the best team members we've ever had are often the ones that are stirring the pot. Always respectfully. You need to be respectful, otherwise no one's going to listen to you. But not being afraid to speak up and have their voice being heard just because they're the new person in the room. And I think that's a two-way street, right? It's important for the new hire or new entry to have that desire to speak up and have that energy to be able to do so. And on the same side, the flip side, the organization needs to create an environment in which that is welcomed and encouraged. But I think that if you have the best intentions and you are curious and you're inquiring about things and poking holes in theories that you think are maybe incorrect, it's going to benefit you, it's going to benefit the org, and it's going to ultimately benefit the mission that you're working on.
Awesome. I love that. And how can our listeners learn more about and support charity water, especially becoming part of the well?
Oh, that would be. So there are a lot of ways. Really, charitywater.org has everything that people would need to learn more about us. There's a lot of great resources on there. If you're interested in learning more about my work specifically, like brand partnerships, where maybe you are creating a company, maybe you've worked for one in the past that you think would be a good fit, or maybe there are even family and friend connections that you have, charitywater.org/partnerships has a lot of great information and resourcing about how we work with brands. And then the spring, if you go to Charity Water's website, you'll see that there's a lot of information about the spring, our monthly giving program, the well, which is the program where people are supporting our operations. It's a much larger commitment, but you never know who's listening. You never know who's whose aunt, uncle, grandfather, could help. But there's just so many great resources to click around and learn more about it. And if you want to get directly in touch with me, if you want to help start a club on campus, or you just want to even learn more about my role, or maybe you're graduating soon and you want to learn more about organizations like ours, just send me an email to anthony@charitywater.org. Pretty simple. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Anthony, for this wonderful conversation today and learning about Charity Water.
Yeah, thanks, Adia. This is great.